Hello everybody, today's video is perfect for any of you that are maybe getting some last minute study in, maybe you are just trying to build a little confidence, or maybe you are just getting started. No judgment from me. And that is building authoritative conclusions, or perhaps providing authoritative conclusions. Now, I'm hopeful this will be a short and snappy video because once you've got this, you've got it, but it's really important that this is something that we are doing in our essays. Now, I'm wearing my You Got This shirt, if you can see, because you've got this. Whether this is day 1 of study or day 365, I don't know your journey, but I know that you've got this, and that is the most important part when it comes to drawing conclusions in your work. I say this to my students all the time, but you have to write confidently. You have to believe what you're saying, otherwise the marker's not going to believe what you're saying. And that is very much the case when it comes to drawing conclusions throughout your work. You have to believe those conclusions. I know in a lot of different classes that you might be taking, and in a lot of other genres of writing, it might not be appropriate for you to write in such a definitive manner. I'm not sure, I can only talk about English. And in this exam and in this essay, you have to write in a definitive manner. Now, that does not mean you want to say I believe, because that's not actually as definitive as just saying something is the case. Because if you're writing I believe that Agnes is innocent, then that is not as credible as if you were to say Agnes is innocent, because that means it's not just your belief, it's factual. Now, we never want to use low modality in our responses. We never want to say things like, Hannah Kent's use of a metaphor might mean this. We want to say Hannah Kent's use of a metaphor positions readers to think. And we can be really confident in that because we know what we're doing. We have prepared ourselves really, really well. If we're not feeling as confident as we should be, I have a whole YouTube channel of videos for you to watch, but I know you know what you're doing and you need to know it too. Now, our EAMG on the day, we don't know exactly what it's going to say, okay? We're not going to get the EAMG in the exam, and it could change from what has been used in previous years, and I cannot provide you with an EAMG today because those are not made public. But what I can tell you is that no matter what the EAMG tells you, provides your interpretation of the text. Now, again, this isn't just I feel sad when I think about Agnes's fate, but it is your interpretation in terms of readers are positioned to feel empathy for Agnes in terms of her fate. That's your interpretation, because nowhere in the novel does it say those words. You've interpreted it to mean so. Now, we know that when it comes to our knowledge and application, that we're going to have to talk about representations, we're going to talk about identities, times, places, those sorts of things. Anywhere in that kind of ball game is what we can expect to need to be analysing. Attitudes, values, beliefs, cultural assumptions, all of those things that we've spent 2 years talking about. We know that we need to analyse those. And when we are analysing those, we must be providing authoritative conclusions. And we must be providing authoritative interpretations. Now, I want you to think about what it means to be authoritative. It means to be of authority. It means to be a bit of a Bjorn Bjondel, okay? Because you are the authority voice on this text, because you are the one that has studied it. You know more than I do. You are ready to write with authority. Not in a way that's commanding, but in a way that really demonstrates belief. Now, I've spoken about believing in yourself for about 5 minutes, so I'm going to show you some examples and how you can improve the authoritative nature of your work. Now, in my exam, if I were to say something like, Kent positions the reader to view Agnes as dehumanized due to her eventual fate. Characters such as Bjondel refer to her as godless, which produces a negative representation of her. I'm not necessarily doing anything wrong. I'm writing quite well, I'm saying some things that are good, but I'm not exactly being authoritative in terms of my interpretations. So if I wanted to strengthen that, I might choose to say something like, Kent positions the reader to view Agnes as dehumanized due to the treatment she receives from authority figures in the text, as evidenced by Bjondel referring to her as godless and a spinster woman throughout her court proceedings. The lexical choice of Kent here constructs a representation of Agnes that is not in line with what her society would expect of her, furthering the extent to which she is stripped of her humanity. Now you can see there that the use of evidence is pretty similar, right? There's that godless quote. In the bumped up version we have spinster woman as well, and that's what people people usually like to try and work on retaining for the exam, right? I know lots of you want to remember quotes, and I understand why we might want to do that, but this is a really good example of having a quote doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be able to know how to use it. And in that second example, we can hear the authoritative nature because the student is writing like they truly know what they're talking about, because they do. Another way to really make sure you're showing just how much what you're saying should be trusted is by really using evidence. Now, when I say this, like always, I don't necessarily mean remembering really long quotes, but making sure that we are, because indirect evidence counts as well, right? And we want to make sure that we are referring to really specific points in the text. So if we want to talk about Agnes and Toadie meeting in a dream, we don't want to say, Agnes had previously met Toadie in a dream. This highlights her belief in superstition and also fate. Now again, there's nothing wrong with that, but if I was marking this, I would read it and I would think, okay, but why do you think that, and how can you be so sure? So in order to make sure that the marker doesn't have those questions, I can write in a way that reads like this. It is only later in the text that Agnes reveals that she had previously met Toadie in a dream. You can see there that the student has said the exact same thing, but because the text says in a dream, we can use it in quotations. A motif that Kent uses throughout the text to signify fate. As Agnes openly discloses this to Toadie, a character Agnes is repetitively shown trusting, the reader is positioned to see how this belief shapes her identity. What's more, Agnes is characterized to be quite skeptical, so her asserting a belief in the foreshadowing of her relationship with Toadie is paramount in understanding her character. You can see there that the idea is the same, but it has really been expanded upon to make sure that the marker understands exactly what you're getting at. What is also really important to note is that the student labels the devices. So by referring to it as a motif and by talking about the fact that it's foreshadowing and also that it shapes her identity, that kind of stuff, it really adds that level of understanding, and it goes from being suitable to being quite discerning, because it really is going to set you apart in terms of just how well you're demonstrating that you know the text. A really important thing to do when demonstrating just how strong your knowledge is making sure that you explain how and why. And this is crucial for analysis. Now, if we, for example, want to refer to something as an extended metaphor, or if we want to talk about how the reader is positioned, we need to expand on that. So instead of saying, Kent's use of an extended metaphor positions the reader to view Agnes's execution as her fate, we want to instead say, Kent's use of an extended metaphor here positions the reader to view Agnes's execution as her fate, as the two events are intrinsically linked and thus the former foreshadowing her unescapable death. You can see there that the idea has been expanded upon, and that makes it much more firm and strong and exactly where we want it to be. Now, the key thing here is to make explicit statements. Don't be vague. Don't dance around your ideas. Say what it is that you want to say. If you truly believe that Toadie is able to provide Agnes with a healing sense of belonging, say that. Don't jump around. Actually firmly say what it is that you think. Don't wait until your conclusion to draw conclusions. You should be doing that all throughout, particularly at the end of each body paragraph, and use those concluding sentences to be a really key place where you can make sure you're doing this, to really drive in the idea that you know what you're talking about. So all in all, my key advice for you is to make sure you answer the how and why for every single point that you make. Make sure you're analyzing how things like aesthetic features and stylistic devices shape the text, instead of just identifying them. You need to analyze how they shape the text and how they position readers. Make sure that every single thing that you say is in response to the question, and make sure everything you say is actively proving your thesis statement. Make sure your knowledge of the text is deep, okay? This is why it's not enough to just read the lit chart. This is why it's not enough to just watch these YouTube videos. You need to read it, and you need to have actively read it, right? Because you need to be forming opinions all throughout. And it's not too late. It's not too late. Go have a read now. In order for your knowledge of the text to be deep, it also has to be holistic. So you have to make sure that you've read the whole text and that you understand the entire text. And if there's any part of it that you just don't understand, make sure you ask your teacher. For most of you, that's me, for help, because it's so crucial that you understand the whole thing. And finally, as I've said many times throughout this video, make explicit statements. Draw conclusions. Don't be vague. Be confident in what you're saying. Don't doubt yourself. Fake it till you make it, because this is really, really obvious in your writing. Practice makes perfect. So pause this video. Well, the video is about to end, but nonetheless, pause this video and I want you to have a go. Write a paragraph. It doesn't have to be a whole essay. I'm going to put a question on the screen here, and I want you to go and write a paragraph. Make it as authoritative and conclusive and in lots of your interpretative, that is not how you say that word, as you possibly can. And I want you to email it to me so that I can give you some feedback. Give yourself 15-20 minutes. You don't have to spend a long time doing this, but have a go. And I look forward to my email inbox just being filled up with amazing things very, very soon. Like I said this whole video, you have to believe in yourself. You've done the work. You're watching this video, so obviously you're studying. You're watching this video, so you're doing something. And it's never ever too late, unless you're watching this as you're walking into that exam room, in which case you're verging on academic misconduct. There's still time. You are going to do amazing.